I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstring Gang or Angola 3. I'm here for life, I'm here to die. Inside these walls, inside the wire. And when the wolf cries, I know it's over. Oh, bloody Angola. Oh, bloody Angola.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. I'm Jim Chapman, and we have a little surprise for you today. Look, Angola, one of the most intriguing things about Louisiana State Penitentiary are the people that work there or have worked there in the past. I have a guest with me today. You're very familiar with her. She's done multiple episodes of Bloody Angola in the past. She also has her own podcast, Unspeakable, a true crime podcast by Kelly Jennings. And today I'm going to go over a little bit with her of her experience getting introduced to Angola, working in Angola, the things she did there. It's going to be a really interesting podcast. But first of all, welcome to Bloody Angola, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's weird calling you Kelly. I usually call you KJ.
Yeah.
Which I invented, and it's incidentally.
Someone called me KJ a few weeks ago. We were somewhere, and I just kept walking because I didn't hear it. Because people, in real life, people don't call me KJ. Well,
Yeah.
some people
do now.
Well, some people do, but my daughter tapped me on the shoulder, and she's like, "Mom, you're being rude." And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I turned around.
Well, welcome back to the show. I know you've done this show several times in the past, and I want to talk about today your personal experience with Louisiana State Penitentiary. And I guess we'll start off with how the interest got in your brain. Now, for those of you listening that maybe have not met Kelly, it's hard for people to wrap their brain around anyone saying, I want to go work at the largest prison in the United States of America, one of the most historic, but also a reputation for a lot of danger. There's primarily lifers at Louisiana State Penitentiary. You don't get locked up there for running red lights.
Right.
And so you were a young female when you started, correct?
Yeah, I think I was 20. No. Yeah, I was in my early 20s. Very early 20s.
20s. And at some point, you made a decision and you said, I think I want to go work in prison.
I did.
Okay.
And I was so excited.
How does this happen?
Okay, so let me back up real quick. So I went to college at LSU.
Yeah.
And I did not know what I wanted to do. I had resigned myself that I was going to have to be a kindergarten teacher because my logic then was, hey, you know more than a kindergartner. You probably could teach them. I'm serious. I'll
give you that.
Maybe I could do that. Well, I took my very first criminology class with a professor named Yoshinori Kamo. And I was enamored. I did not know that was such a class. Every word he said, I hung on. I literally read the textbook, which makes me a total nerd. But anyone's gone to college knows you're not going to just sit down and actually read the textbook. You're going to hit some highlight moments if you even buy the book.
Cliff notes.
Yeah. This mama, I sat down and I ate it up.
Was it the teaching style of that?
It was
professor?
It was his teaching style along with just the content. I was very, very, he knew what he was talking about. Matter of fact, this is kind of off topic, but he told me he was from Korea, I think. if I had that wrong, don't come at me. But he said, y'all need to get your minds right. And he had this accent, and he said, because y'all talk on the phone, soon the years are coming, this text. You'll only be texting people. You don't know in America yet. You will only be texting. And I laughed at him. I'm like, I'm not texting look at us now.
Yeah.
The man was cool as crap. But anyway, shout out to him if he's still a professor. But he, once I took that class, that was it. It was on. All I did was watch Forensic Files and Court TV. So my mom one day told me, she said, why are you in school taking all these education classes when all you do is love crime? I said, well, what am I going to do, Mama? Get a degree in crime? And she said, yes, stupid. And I was like, oh, my bad, Mama. So she really got me into these, into the mix of criminal justice. My senior year, I was sitting in a juvenile justice class, and a warden came in from Angola. Her name was Kathy Fontenot, and she is tiny but mighty. And she just started talking, and I was fixated. I looked around the classroom, too. I'll never forget this. And the other students, some of them were kind of like just looking down, looking at their phones or whatever, and I'm like hanging on every word that she said. So I started asking her questions about the rodeo because I had been to it, and I wanted to know things about it. She looked at me. She said, what's your name? I said, Kelly. She said, I want to talk to you after class. I said, okay. And I kind of took that as like, be quiet. So I was like, oh dang, Well, after class, sure enough, she said, you're really interested, aren't you? I said, oh, I'm like sickly interested. I've always loved prison and crime and all that. She said, how about you come out to Angola and I will give you a personal tour? And I thought I had just been invited to the White House. I just, this is the greatest thing. And she made good on her word a few days later, because I graduated just a few weeks late, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
And she took me up on it, and I showed up. She got me in her car, took me on a personal tour of the facility. First time she brought me in the dorms, and she told me, she said, if you want a job, you've got one.
Really?
Yeah. And I said, I'll be here tomorrow or whenever you want me to be here. My mama cried. Oh, my God.
Wow. Interesting.
She said, you're going to die. I said, Mama, I mean, everyone can't die every day.
Well, but look, in looking back now, you're a parent. I'm a parent. I get that.
I get it.
I would be freaking the F out if my kid was like, I want to go work in Angola. I mean, I think it'd be cool, and I would accept it, obviously.
But I mean, I was 5
My first thought was, they'll kill you.
Yeah, that's what
Who do you think you are? Some kind of a badass?
Look, when I was, I'm 20, I was 5'4", maybe 110 pounds, but a ball of dynamite, rolled up in there, and I'm glad I did. I loved it.
So that first day, let's talk about that. So you get hired eventually, and you get hired for what?
So my job was what's called an ARDC Specialist 1. So you have to have a degree to, I guess, qualify. Classification, that's what the job was that I got. So classification is going to be someone that has a little bit more education than the average, I say a little bit. You have to have a college degree.
Yeah.
And so, it's a little bit of a higher pay grade. I'm not acting like it's a warden or anything, obviously. It's still, I would consider it entry level, but a little bit higher than that. And so my job was that when inmates would come in, I had to determine housing, custody, and quarters of the inmates.
And how did you do that?
So I was young. A lot of it was watching other people and trying to figure out what the hell they were doing. But this would be, so you would have to look at what's called their jacket. Their jacket is their file, basically. You flip it open, they do what's called AUN, and then you're looking and you're trying to determine what type of crime do they have, where are they from, how old are they, everything is taken, totality of circumstances taken in. Now, obviously, if you're a death row inmate, you're going to death row.
Sure.
I mean, hello.
Yeah, that's easy.
But if you were really young, if you were under 5'7" and you're white and you're a non-violent offender, maybe you're 3 strikes and you're out type thing, or drug dealing or something like that, you're going to be in a bind behind prison walls because you are going to be a target for sexual aggression. No. And so things like that, you would look at them and say, all right, Padna, I'm going to put you. So you have options. We have dorms that are open. We have, I'm in no way affiliated with Angola, just to be fair, but anymore. We have working cell blocks. WCB is how it would be written. Working cell blocks. We have cell blocks. There's lockdown. There's admin seg. There's all these different options. Majority of your inmates, if they're not really young, if they weren't 17, something like 18, they're going to go to a working cell block scenario. And so what that is where you're in a cell block to sleep, to eat your lunch. But other than that, they wake you up at the butt crack of dawn, get on your clothes, you're going to walk out, they're going to do count, which is taking attendance. They're going to make you do what's called deucing it up, which means you get into 2 lines that are right next to each other. You're going to walk out the gate. There's going to be officers on horseback, and they're going to escort you to the fields. It's a working cell block. And so you're going to walk out with your tool, whatever, if it's a hoe or whatever it is that you might need, swing blade or whatever. They walk you out to the field. You're going to pick your crops, work the fields. They'll march you back, and you go into your cell to eat your lunch, and then they march you back out.
Yeah.
Do your more work, the rest of your work, and then they march you back in.
Interesting. And so you basically classified these individuals, and it was in an effort to maybe keep them safe as well to an extent. I mean, you know, you don't want to put let me give you an example. If you're a guy, you go to Angola, you're 55 years old, you don't necessarily look like a threat, although anybody in there is a threat
looks
to to some extent. But do you take age into consideration?
Yeah, and you would also take, okay, maybe not on paper. So I know there's someone who's going to jump down my throat and be like, no, maybe not on paper. But if I'm looking at you and let's say you murdered somebody, okay? Anybody's capable of anything on any day.
Sure. We
have people that are in wheelchairs that are very sickly that can still pull a trigger and kill somebody. However, the Constitution still provides that I need to, once you're in our custody, we still have an obligation to protect you from obvious concerns.
Yeah.
And so maybe you come in and you're elderly and you're frail and you're in a wheelchair. Well, I'm not going to be inclined to put you with some young buck who's going to be able to manipulate, harass, and hurt you for obvious reasons because you can't defend yourself. Now, you know, that's worst case type scenario I'm talking. I mean, most people are going to just have to buck it out. I mean,
you're in prison.
You're in prison. You better learn to. But I can tell you too, and again, things have changed a lot since I've been there. And so like Camp C, I believe, is now a release camp type thing where we have people that come in that used to be that if you weren't doing 20 years or more, you weren't really coming to Angola. It's not that way anymore. But we used to have the main prison, and then there's camps all around it. The main prison is divided into the East Yard and the West Yard. And we used to call the West Yard the wild side. The East Yard was more of like your old timers been down there for a while. They're not necessarily old, but they've been there long enough to know the rules. They've calmed down a little bit. They don't want as much drama and all that. So we'd put those young bucks that think, oh, bro, I'm coming to prison, man, I'm a fight. Okay, well, you're going on the West Side, the wild side.
Yeah.
And then the other ones, we kind of segregated off to the...
Yeah, ones just wanting to do their time.
Yeah.
That's what
I like to think of it kind of like freshmen in high school versus seniors. Yeah. There's a distinct difference between them.
Interesting. So you start that first day. Tell me, do you remember what your first day was like? Do you remember nerves? Do you remember...
I did not have any nerves. I think it was maybe young and dumb.
Yeah.
I was more nervous about I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
Yeah.
But I've quickly figured out that, you know, an inmate can, and they will help you if you need information, but sometimes that can come at a cost. And so you have to just kind of learn how to navigate that. You know, you don't want to put all your trust into this inmate who's going to be very kind and very helpful and tell you all these nice things and blah, blah, blah. And when you're young, okay, today I would tell someone to just get somewhere. But when you're very young and I'm 20 years old and I've got these 60-year-old, in all honesty, I've got these 50 and 60-year-old men that are coming to me and I'm running like, doing disciplinary boards and things like that. There was an element of, these are my elders. And if you're not from the South, maybe it doesn't hit you that way. But I had to consciously remember
who you were dealing with.
I cannot say yes, sir, to you. And that's been ingrained in me since I was a kid. Yes, sir, and no, sir. But you can't do that in prison. I mean, you're the authority there. That was a learning curve. And I think that was not necessarily addressed as it probably should be for young people coming into prison settings. They tell you about the games that are going to be played and you don't trust inmates, you know, blah, 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 blah. But there's a learning curve with your manners and yes sir, no sir. Let me tell you a little story. I think I've told it before, but I'll make it brief. But we do these boards periodically where the inmates, you do call outs, they come line up and then you call them in and you do like a quick assessment on them. It's required. And it's like, did you have a job on the street? What was your conviction? Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Well, I walked out on the walk and I had my paperwork and I said, Mr. Brown. And no inmate came up, but a lieutenant did on the tier, and he snatched me in the room and he said, don't you ever call an inmate Mr. Brown. You are the authority. And I was like, well, and he's like, no, you need to learn this. And someone should have taught you this. Don't you ever call an inmate Mr. That compromises, the authority complex. I said, hold on. No, hear me now. You're not going to be on my, blah, blah, blah. I said, his name is Mr. He said, what? And I turned the paperwork around. I said, his first name is Mr. He's like, oh, shit.
Oh, that's wild.
It's weird, but his first name was Mr. I said, so I walked out there. I was like, Inmate Brown, because But everybody, Brown's a common name. That's
Yeah.
why I was calling the first name, but shit.
Wow.
Yeah.
That lieutenant felt like an ass.
he did. He was like, oh, my bad. I was like, yeah, you're bad.
Yeah, it is your bad. Okay, so let me ask you this.
Okay.
You're young,
Yeah.
female,
Yeah.
Pretty.
Thanks, Jim.
What in that situation, what was the danger for you? Like, did they tell you can't wear perfume? You can't.
Yeah. So part of the rule book, you get a rule book and they're very clear. There's no reason to be wearing perfume. There's no reason to have a ton of makeup on. There's no reason to have flashy jewelry. Classification 2 is not a uniformed position. It's like more of a professional level. I don't want to say they're not professional. You know what I'm saying? They don't issue a uniform to me.
Right.
I wore slacks. I wore dress shirts and things like that.
Like business attire.
Yeah. You start wearing really tight clothing, we have an issue.
Did they have people that did that? Tell the truth.
Yeah, they had a few people that I couldn't understand. Like, they would wear stiletto heels, and I'm thinking, the fuck? Like, I have to walk
Freaking
around.
inmates be going crazy, girl. You
know.
wearing stiletto?
I know. I wore boots. Like, I had these leather boots. They were tall.
You're wearing like Birkenstocks.
Well, I had to have good walking shoes. You don't know how much walking that is. That's 18,000
Yeah,
acres,
true.
you know?
Yeah.
So I wore these same boots almost every day. They were nice, professional looking, but I wore slacks, so you didn't know how tall they were or anything. And I walked the sole off of those shoes.
Dang.
I had to have them replaced. I did not understand the stiletto heels. I think you're asking, and there's going to be people, how you dress does not indicate. Okay, you're in prison.
You're in prison with men who ain't been with women,
Yes.
some of them, in 20 years.
Yes. So, no, behind prison bars, look nice, look professional, but there's a difference between,
Looking professional.
looking
Professional.
Looking professional. So, yeah.
Professional.
I don't think I knew that I was pretty enough that it affected my day in, day out. I mean, I just was me. I got dressed and I went to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, and these guys are thirsty in there, right? There's buck wild. A lot of them ain't been around that shit. As a matter of fact, I've interviewed some former inmates who had spent many years behind bars, and one of the things that they said blew their mind when they got out of prison, one of the first things they noticed was the smell of a woman. They said, you go in Walmart. One of them described to me, he went in Walmart, a woman walked past him and she had perfume on. He said, it blew me away. And he said, the reason it did is because I hadn't smelled perfume in 30 years.
Yeah. Because
And this woman walks by me smelling so good. I mean, it's a little weird, but for these guys, they aren't used to that. So I get it. You could have a major problem in prisons if you're, spraying on Giorgio or something.
There's a way to be professional and also firm but fair, you know, and my looks should have no impart on my job. And I guess I didn't think of it
that way.
Yeah, I went to work.
Yeah, I get it. Can you think of a mistake you made that was like a big mistake when you were there? Something that looking back on it, you're like, wow, I'm lucky that.
Yeah. Well, no. I do remember one time I accidentally walked in the camp with my cell phone in my pocket. You're not allowed to bring, or then, I don't know what the rules are now, but you're
sure
absolutely right. Yeah. The wardens have theirs, but I mean, I should not have had my phone. And when I tell you, I felt like I had just committed the biggest I could not wait to get out. I turned when I realized, I was like, I was like trying to run to get out of the gates and go put my phone up. That's
interesting.
Yeah, that didn't. But I can tell you too that even when you do everything right, bad things happen.
Yeah.
So I tried to help out one time. There was a woman that worked with me, and the inmates had been complaining that she wasn't making her rounds like she was supposed to. So like if you're in a cell block, you can't get out to go get help from classification. So classification does things like helps with your visitation list, or if you need to add an attorney to your phone list, or a friend or a family, or if they need a special visit, maybe grandma's dying and they would like to see grandma and there's not enough time for them to come on the special, or maybe grandma or mom, sister, whatever, is from out of state and they're only here for these days. And so those aren't visitation days, but please, can we work something out? I haven't seen my sister in 20 years.
Yeah.
And so again, they're inmates, but they're people. And that's my job. My job is not to judge them behind bars. My job is to do my job.
Sure.
So there were some complaints that this woman wasn't making her rounds. And now that I don't work there, I'll say it's probably true. She was not a very nice woman either. So I said, you know what? I feel like getting out. It's nice outside. I went and made my rounds on my tiers that I was supposed to. And then I decided I would just go clean up and go make it extra rounds on her tiers for her. So I went in, hey, what you need? Handed out paperwork, whatever. Well, shortly after that, I got a lawsuit filed against me and by an inmate. It's called an ARP, an ARP, Administrative Remedy Procedure. But it never made it to court or anything because it was so ludicrous.
Frivolous, yeah.
Yeah, but I was so young, it stressed me out. He sued me. He was like for millions of dollars.
For what?
Because he said that I was not making my rounds consistently and I only showed up once that month. Well, bitch, the reason I was down there once that month is I'm not your damn officer.
Yeah.
I was doing extra.
Right.
So things like that would often...
And they've got nothing but time,
Yeah,
and
it was
it costs them nothing to file a lawsuit because there are indigent laws in place that pay for them to file lawsuits, so they can file $100 a month, and they really could care less. It's funny to them that you would have to take 5 minutes to actually deal with it.
Yeah. Now, if I would have been walking that prison today, I'd be like, cool lawsuit, bro. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
Like I'd be like, get out of my face. But yeah, I can't think of any big, huge.
Well, the cell phone thing's interesting. Let me ask you this. Did you ever meet an inmate and you're thinking, I can't believe this guy's in here?
Yes.
Yeah?
Oh,
a lot of them?
absolutely. One that sticks out to me and will always stick out to me. He's out now, though, is an inmate named Joseph Greco.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so kind. And his kindness did not strike the way other manipulative kindness struck. I met his mama at the rodeo.
Yeah.
He made furniture and he was a big guy, muscular at the time. He had a big I think he had a big mustache, just a big guy. And I remember him saying, he had kind of a coon-ass accent, oh, Miss Kelly, I want you to meet my mom. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. So I walk over and there's this little old lady and my family's Boudreaux, okay? We got the coon-ass all up in our family. Yeah. And she was one too. And she said, oh, can I hug you? Please, can I hug you? You take such good care of my son. You're just so kind. And kind people don't come along often like this and blah, 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 blah. And it just touched my heart because, I didn't know this lady from Adam. Yeah. And then I got to meet him. And some people are going to go, well, God, you were kind of close. No, it just so happened at the rodeo that the family gets to be there. Yeah. And he got locked up before his daughter was even born. And I got to meet his daughter that day too. And she was an adult and pregnant with her grandbaby or with his grandbaby.
Yeah.
And so I don't know the true story 100%. I'd have to go look it up. From what I understand, I think he got in a bar fight and killed somebody. And the Joe Greco I knew was calm. He was older, though. Think about it. He'd been down a long time.
Yeah.
Now looking back on it, it's like him being me now.
Yeah.
Versus when I was 20. You're a different person.
Yeah.
Some people are
100%.
Yeah.
Most people. I mean, even your hardest people. You're way different at 40 than you were at 20.
But I'll tell you too, I met
60 than you were at 40.
I met some at 60 who had the same mentality that they did when they were 20, and it was like Arrested Development. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? Like you're 60 years old, and I'm having to discipline you. Get your life together.
Yeah, good point. Well, at some point, you decide to leave Angola. Yeah. Tell me about that. What made that decision?
So it was a hard one because I really liked my job. I loved my job, but I got a phone call randomly. I was outside of Maine prison eating lunch in my car, and I got a phone call from someone or a message to call someone in Livingston Parish from the school board. And I was like, what in the hell? So I called, and they were looking for somebody that would be interested in starting a pilot program out in Livingston Parish. They wanted to do a criminal justice program. And so they had called Angola to ask, did they have anybody, but they needed someone who had a master's degree. Well, I think I was the only, at that time, I was the only administrative level person that had one.
Yeah.
And so they took the number and sent it to me, and I called, and it just so happened I lived in Livingston Parish. I was making a hell of a commute every day.
Yeah.
A long commute.
Yeah.
That's how much I liked my job, though.
Yeah.
That'll tell you something.
You must have, yeah.
I loved it. And so I just made the hard decision that that's what I was going to do. It was closer to my house. It was a better fit. And don't you know that lasted 17 years?
Ain't that something? Mm-hmm. And, it's important to mention during your, I guess, tenure at Louisiana State Penitentiary, you also helped do the tours for
I did.
people that would come in at one point. And how was that? You liked that?
I loved it. I loved it. Obviously, I like talking on podcasts. So telling the stories and all of that was just so exciting to me.
Yeah, yeah. Were there any escapes or anything while you were there that you can recall?
Not while I was working there. There was an escape while I was on a field trip with students there.
Oh,
and they promptly kicked our ass out.
I remember you telling me.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah. He was a road walker was his job, and so basically he walked. Again, 18,000 acres. He walked the roads, picked up trash, whatever, and he just walked away. He never made it for count, and they found him like a day or two later, laid up in a like a creek bed or a ditch or whatever.
And who was your warden when you were there? The main warden.
Kane. It was Warden Kane.
Warden Kane.
Yes.
Wow. Probably the most famous of all.
I liked Warden Kane. I thought he was a cool dude. And he wrote a book called Kane's Redemption.
Yeah, great book.
I used to teach out of it in my class. He's the only warden that had ever seen the electric chair. He may have seen a hanging. An electric chair. And I know you're like, what? He didn't see a hanging. It was something about when he was young. I don't remember. But he was the only one that had seen the electric chair and multiple types of executions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and very heavily credited with bringing religion to the forefront of Louisiana State Penitentiary, which then in turn changed a lot of the culture inside of that prison. A lot of that credited towards Burl Cain and the things that he did. Of course, we've done a podcast. We've got a 3-part episode way back there somewhere with all about Burl Cain and his contribution to that prison.
And they sent a thing out one day and were like, come to the main prison chapel at 3:00 for a treat or something like that. And I was like, well, let me go check that out. And it was Aaron Neville.
Oh, yes.
I got to hear Aaron Neville sing.
Oh, I did I did an episode on him and the Neville brothers when they did a concert there. Yeah. I did a whole episode on that somewhere back in the archives, if you will.
That was cool. You don't expect that.
Yeah.
But also, if people know the ski mask rapist, which was a big ski mask rapist, he was an issue for me because I was working. They moved me to Camp J, which is no longer a thing, but that was like the worst camp. It's like the lockdown, bad stuff there. And they moved me there. I think I only worked there 2 days, 3 days, but the ski mask rapist, they said he was being seen too frequently in my shadow, basically, as I was walking. And so they were like, we're moving you. I said, okay. So I got moved back a couple days later.
And interesting thing, I've done an episode on him, and interesting thing about him is he was kind of a player. Yeah. He was kind of he was not he was a good looking guy for ski mask rapist.
I don't remember seeing
I don't know how to say it, but he was that was a reputation. Very charming guy. And someone that liked to drive flashy cars when he was on the loose. So go back and listen to that, folks, if you get the opportunity. I got one last question for you. So you mentioned that you ate lunch in your car, but was that your thing, or did you ever eat in the cafeteria that the prisoners cooked the food?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I just happened to be in my car because I was doing something. I didn't go out to my car to eat lunch. But they also used to have a place you could go eat lunch there that was cooked by free people, too, at the when they had the golf course there. But, yes, I did eat the food from the camp. So at Camp D, when I was there, they always had chocolate chip cookies. And then every now and then they had these crab cakes. I know that sounds crazy, but they did. And I know, right? I freaking loved it. And so I'd call down there and I'd be like, hey, get me a tray. And they'd say, what you want? I want some cookies and I want some crab cakes. And they'd be like, you got it. And I'd be sitting there like a little fat ass eating my cookies and my crab cakes.
And I was going to ask you, what was your favorite meal to get? And you just answered that.
I can tell you this too. Them boys could cook those greens now. I'm telling you. And I never liked greens, but
right there in the prison.
Yeah. And so I'm not going to lie. I mean, I ain't scared. I'll try me some food. Look, one time I went in the cafeteria, and so my personality is I'm a goober, whatever. Yeah. And so I walk in there and I can hear them singing. The inmates are cooking. And I can hear them singing some old blues or something in the back. And I was like, hey, y'all know who sings that? And they were like, oh yeah, man, yeah. And they turn and they're like punching each other, like, what was his name? What was his name? And they go back and forth, and I'm just sitting there waiting. And then he said the name, and I said, yeah, well, let's let him do it. And I was the inmates were like, blah! They started like ragging on the guy, and I'm looking back on it. I probably should have done that. It was funny.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I just wanted to, people are really intrigued about life inside of that prison, not only from the inmate standpoint, but people that have worked there at some point in their lives. And we've had several people on. Thank you for coming on, sharing some of your experience. Everyone check out Unspeakable, a true crime podcast by Kelly Jennings. If you have not had the pleasure to do so, you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search Unspeakable Kelly Jennings. And until next time, for Bloody Angola, I'm your host, Jim Chapman, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. Peace!
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hill String Gang or Angola